Is this just the audio going out, or do you put out the video of this? How do you do this?
We don't put the video out. It's up to you whether you wanna come on camera or not. It's absolutely fine. It'd be nice to see you.
I'm just wondering, 'cause I'm not going to strip naked or something. It's all good. I could do. That could be a bit special.
Well, we could tell everyone that you are. You don't have to actually do it.
Yeah. Hello and welcome along once again to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast that knew all along that Californication was released as a single in the UK on August 7th, 2000, and only mentioned it in order to check everyone was listening properly. I'm the Fusey from Pusey, Stu Choslin, and joining me as always is the Pistol from Bristol, Alex Greenwood. Greenie, how are you, mate?
Well, I'm surprised to see you here. Actually, I thought it might be Joe Barter in your place, but
well. We had some stern words after the recording finished at the end of the last episode, and it's been decided that I will keep my job going forward. But this is very much a 3 strikes and you're out. So and this was a pretty big second strike. So I've had a word with Joe and with Jeff, and Joe is actually in my living room at the moment. He's waiting to come in at a moment's notice. Hopefully, I can keep my job for at least another episode.
Yeah, cool. I hope so. But I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to this episode. I think it's going to be really interesting interviews.
Yes, absolutely. So if you haven't heard, we're talking to Grammy Award-winning drummer Rob Bryan tonight, an old friend of mine, about his 1990s. So hopefully it will be a really great episode. It's the first in-depth interview really we've done since we spoke to Will Hodgson a little while back. Yeah, really looking forward to getting going on this one. Before we go any further, I should mention that our sponsor this week is Cellnet. If you simply quote the code ALRIGHT90s, you can choose 2 people to call free on their landlines at off-peak times, right up until the new millennium. That's whether you're a new or existing customer. That's an amazing offer from Cellnet. So thank you very much, guys, for weighing in with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now more than ever we should be keeping in touch with our loved ones. So
absolutely,
that's a really useful offer. So thanks to those guys. I've heard there's talk of maybe there being a merger or something to do, some link with BT. I'm not sure if that's true.
Is that right?
Yeah. So.
Well, those rumours are always swimming around. I heard something similar about 1-to-1 recently, I think. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Greenie, when did you get your first mobile phone?
Good question. I think it was on 1-to-1.
Leading very nicely in there. There we are.
Yeah, I think it was on 1-to-1 or possibly I think it was started on Tesco Mobile and somehow got it switched over, but would have been 2000, 2001, I think. I can still picture the phone. I can't remember who made it. It wasn't a Nokia. Mm-hmm. It must be. I was still at school, still at secondary school. It could store 10 text messages. I remember that. What about you? When did you get yours?
Well, the first mobile phone in my house belonged to my dad, and it was one of those Philips Savvy phones. Do you know that they were very, very ubiquitous at the time? In the very late 90s. And I remember this very clearly. The network was called U, just the letter U, and the logo was a thumbprint with a U inside it. But I don't know what happened to that network or what it was part of or anything like that. I'll have to do some research around that. But then my first phone that I got for myself was on my 11th birthday, so December 2000. And I got a Nokia 3310 out of the Argos catalogue. And I still have the same phone number all these years later. I've never had a different phone number. So
brilliant.
There we are. It celebrated its 21st birthday at the end of last year. So
How did you celebrate?
Oh, I took it out for a few drinks and nice bite to eat. It enjoyed itself, yeah, very much so. I mean, it's had a few different handsets over the years, but seems happy in its current home.
Yeah. Did you go to a phone box and dial it as a treat?
I should have done, but I didn't think of that at the time. But maybe for its 22nd coming up, maybe I'll keep that in mind. Have we got any correspondence to kick off this episode? I think we've got some left over from the music videos a couple of weeks ago, haven't we?
Yes, we do, exactly. Brother of the pod, Adam, says he did mention a lit video in the last episode, but he's also said California Love had an incredible video. and it was a great time for music videos. They were obviously seen as worth spending time and money on, and Blur also had some great videos in the 90s, and surely you have to mention Jamiroquai and Virtual Insanity. So obviously he'd sent this message before he heard the episode, or before we'd recorded it, so he would have not known that we did talk about Virtual Insanity. That was one of Joe's choices.
And hopefully he will have been very pleased that we did talk about Virtual Insanity.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, as he said, surely we had to, and we did. We came to on that. And California Love got a mention as well.
Not more California stuff. I can't handle it. I cannot handle it.
Yeah. I mean, it is a good point as well about it being a great time for music videos. I guess it was, I think like Joe said, it was a golden era, and the money was there, and they wanted to spend it, didn't they? And it sort of really meant something. So
quite right.
And Ruth Collinson also said on Facebook, kind of along the same lines there, that some music videos were big events in the 90s, with them premiering on primetime TV, such as Black or White by Michael Jackson. She said she's pretty sure that doesn't happen anymore. And I agree. I don't think it does happen anymore. There may be sort of premiere stuff on YouTube. I'm not sure, like when they announce it, but not as far as I know. She says that in the 90s, there also seemed to be an increasing amount of music videos that featured clips from the films that they were featured in, brackets sometimes even if only on the credits, which I totally remember. She says it was like the music videos were the main trailers for the films back then, possibly because more people started to have satellite TV maybe, and so watched a lot more music videos with MTV and VH1 music channels. Some examples she gives are Dangerous Minds, which was Gangster's Paradise by Coolio, Days of Thunder, which was Show Me Heaven by Maria McKee, and of course Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with
of course
Everything I Do by Bryan Adams. Which reminds me, actually, in the last episode, I did say that I couldn't find, or the video for Everything I Do by Bryan Adams wasn't on YouTube. What I should have made clear was that I meant the original video. There is a video on YouTube. It's like a live sort of montage, but it's not the original one that had clips from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And that's the one I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't because it wasn't on YouTube.
Like the Stereophonics video, then it seems to have been replaced by a live performance. There has to be some sort of rights thing at play here, I think.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as we said, Pick Apart This Nude, the video is based on The Italian Job, and I don't know if there's been some sort of complaint filed by the makers of The Italian Job. I don't know, but it seems strange that these videos for these hit songs have been, sort of incongruously replaced, really.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Stereophonics one especially is surprising because it's not showing scenes from the film. It's just it's an homage to it. So very odd. Yeah, maybe one day we'll get a member of the band on to come in and they'll tell us what really happened behind the scenes. But yeah, Ruth's point I think is interesting about how film montages and clips from films would be in music videos a lot more back then, and they were like trailers in their own right, and I really don't think that does happen anymore. Maybe it does a bit, and like just a recent example I can think of is Happy by Pharrell being a music video, having sort of connections to the Minions film. And the Minions are in the video, I think, but they're not scenes from the film. So
no. I mean, the thing I take from that is being an avid viewer of Top of the Pops 92, which is on BBC 4 at the moment. We're in a period where every few weeks they will announce we've got a world exclusive Michael Jackson video premiere on Top of the Pops this evening, and almost like 10 minutes of the episode is taken up by this full length 8 to 10 minute video. I might have mentioned this on the music videos episode, I can't quite recall, but we're in a period at the moment where every few weeks another one comes through, and we've had Black or White, we've had, I don't know the name of the song, but there's been one with Naomi Campbell. And there's been one with Eddie Murphy as well, which I thought was a film trailer one because it was very cinematic, and Eddie Murphy's playing a pharaoh or something like that, I think. But it's not actually. It is just a self-contained video. It's not a film trailer at all. So yeah, these sorts of videos, as you say, they're a little bit of a dying breed, I think.
Yeah, I need to really get back on Top of the Pops 1992. I missed almost all of 91 for my shame, and I have to give it some attention.
You've just missed the period where Jimmy Nail is number one with Ain't No Doubt, so it's almost not worth watching now. Although actually no, Charles and Eddie are coming up with Would I Lie to You? So get on it. I've changed my mind. Get on it.
One other piece of business which we should cover for our shame should have been done a long time ago. It's an embarrassing, shameful omission, really. Is that
what have I done now?
This is something that it falls on both our heads, I'm afraid, not just yours. And that is the topic of Legends of the Pod. So obviously we already have one legend in the pod. Lee Burnsy Burns
rightly so.
is a well-deserved legend of the pod. But for some reason, I don't know why this didn't happen, but of course, Kate Pro should be a legend of the pod and is hereby announced officially as another legend of the pod. Because Kate, I know you're going to be listening. You've given us so much support right from the beginning. You give us loads of nice correspondence. You listen to all the episodes, and you just generally back us in every way. And we're sorry this hasn't happened before, but you are now definitely a legend of the pod.
Let's not forget she's been a fantastic guest as well.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
One of our most popular episodes, the fashion episode.
Indeed, and I think there's going to be a part 2 coming shortly as well, isn't there? Or hopefully. So,
yeah.
There'll be more Kate Pro content to come for sure.
Yeah, it's in the ledger. Kate Pro, legend of the pod.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Right, so I have what's the most 90s for you here, Stu. We've done various topics, sort of items and foodstuffs and things like that, but this one's a bit different, a bit out of the box. And I'm asking you today, Stu, what the most 90s celebrity scandal is. Well,
normally for the What's the Most 90s segment, when you pose these questions to me, I normally go with the first thing that comes to my mind, because I find that is the way I want to go. So, for instance, Men Behaving Badly, I think I said for the sitcom and so on and so forth. But I had to think about this quite a bit, and there's one in the public consciousness at the moment, I think, which is the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee thing, which has obviously now been dramatized for Disney Plus very recently, and all sorts of other things. But the one I've gone for, the one that I think is, for me, the most 90s, is Hugh Grant and Divine Brown.
It's a great one. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is 1994, I think, and it's happening just as Hugh Grant's first major feature film is about to be released. So obviously it comes at a very, very bad time for him. I don't really have a real memory of this at the time, apart from there being lots of references to it on the TV and in newspapers. I do remember there being quite a bit of a buzz around it. Obviously it was big news, but in my research, I didn't research it too deeply for obvious reasons. But one thing I did find out was that while the activity was taking place, shall we say, the reason that the police were alerted to the fact that something was going on was that Hugh Grant kept pushing the brake pedal of his car. And the brake lights kept coming on, which alerted the police to the fact that something might be going on in this stationary car. So yeah, obviously his career recovered, and he's gone on to be one of Britain's best loved film actors. But in terms of celebrity scandal, I've gone for Hugh Grant's misstep with Divine Brown. Did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, that's a really good choice. I one of the most famous mugshots of the 90s, isn't it? I think
indeed
the Hugh Grant mugshot from that. My choice was, as you'd already mentioned, the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee sex tape. It like you said, it's in everyone's minds at the moment because of the program. Yeah, I kind of thought of some other things, but that was the one that I think, because Pamela Anderson was was the 90s pinup. I think that, in my opinion. So that, for that reason, but also because of what it represented in terms of the beginning of the sort of internet age, because it was obviously shared around the internet. Then that was probably the first example of something like that going viral, as it were. So it's really rooted in a time and place, in a time, because of that sort of burgeoning dawn of the internet. So those two things combined, I just thought this is the most 90s celebrity scandal. So yeah, that was my choice.
Two people I know almost nothing about apart from this. I mean, I know that Tommy Lee was the drummer in Motley Crue, and I know that Pamela Anderson was in Baywatch, but they're two people whose careers I've never really sort of followed that closely. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but
no,
there we
I'm
are.
the same. I think Motley Crue was sort of before our time, weren't they? And kind of almost, well, I think definitely more famous for their wild, debauched sort of lifestyle than any music they ever made. It's Girls. Was that Motley Crue?
Yeah, Girls. Dr. Feelgood was another one. I'd be hard pressed to name a third.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there you go. I guess they were sort of maybe as famous for this sex tape than anything else. But I guess, yeah, Baywatch was huge, but again, a bit before our time. So we've got the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee sex tape and the Divine Brown and Hugh Grant incident.
Yes.
Brake light incident. The brake light incident.
They're in the ledger next to Stone's Bitter and everything else that's in there.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've got any thoughts on what you think the most 90s celebrity scandal is or anything we've forgotten, please do let us know. Yeah, I'd be really interested to know on this one, actually, because I bet there's lots of stuff that just didn't occur to me. Like the Divine Brown, Hugh Grant thing, I'd totally forgotten about. So I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts out there, what you think is the most 90s celebrity scandal. Get in touch in the usual channels, which we'll go over at the end as usual.
Do you know, I had a friend in sixth form who was a big fan of Motley Crue, and he told me that it was his plan to get a full-size Motley Crue logo tattooed on his back, and then go to a Motley Crue gig, get them all to sign around this logo on his back, and then get the autographs tattooed over as well.
Yeah.
I'm not in touch with him anymore, but I wonder if he ever sort of went through with it.
Yeah. Well, see if you can get back in touch with him if he did.
Gary, if you're listening, let me know. It'd be good to hear from you after all these years. Do you want to see a little 90s eBay buy that I made the other day? That's just come through the post today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's only small, but I saw this and I couldn't resist it. There you go. Can you see that?
Oh, brilliant.
That is from the Premier League 96 sticker album, and that is Mark Bosnich.
With a classic 90s sort of Catholic dog collar style goalkeeper jersey.
Yeah, that's one that's in my personal collection as well. So yeah, I had to have it. It was only a couple of quid, but these stickers have got "Did you know?" facts on the back. So do you want the "Did you know?" for this sticker?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you know that Teddy Sheringham won a second division winners medal with Millwall in 1988?
No, I didn't.
Well, there you are. You do know.
I wasn't expecting the "Did you know?" to be about a completely different player to the one on the sticker. Yeah, that's a bit
strange, that, isn't it? I don't know why it's not about Mark Bosnich or Aston Villa in general, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to go on my laptop, I think, next to I've got Mike Wozniak and Kermit on there at the moment. So Mark is going to go in the pantheon of legends.
Yeah. On
the back of my laptop. There we are.
Very nice. I had two of the Merlin sticker annuals. I think I had 93, 94, 94, 95, I think. So I think yours is the season after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the golden age of sticker annuals.
Oh, definitely.
As far as we're concerned.
I never got to complete one, sadly, but I remember making a big case with my parents to be taken to. They used to run these free, like, swap shops at McDonald's outlets.
Oh, okay.
Around this time, and there was one scheduled to like take place at the McDonald's in Chippenham, and I wanted to take all my swaps down there and get my swap on, but I think it must have been during the school holidays, and there was nobody available to take me because I used to stay with my grandparents during the school holidays who didn't drive, so I had to miss out on the swap shop. I completed several Euro and World Cup sticker albums later on in my life at great expense, so I haven't missed out on the experience, and which are all now worth a lot less than what I paid for them in total. So
yeah,
there's a lesson to be learned there, kids. Our guest tonight is a man who's played drums all over the world with some of the most notable artists of the modern day. He's about to appear at the Beatles Museum in Liverpool to demonstrate some of Ringo Starr's most famous grooves. But he's here tonight to take us through what the 1990s means to him. It's an honour and a pleasure to be able to welcome to the podcast Robbie Bryan. Rob, how you doing, mate?
Hey, Stu. Hi, Alex.
Hey.
I'm good. Nice to see you guys. I'm great. Actually, I'm not just good. I'm great. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. There's a lot of, grim things going on in the world which are affecting us all. But, I'm trying to keep a positive thoughts and train of thought and keep moving forward, and hope things can sort themselves out. So, yeah, I'm pretty good, man. I'm pretty good.
Oh, that's great to hear. Then thanks so much for making time to come and speak to us. And I understand you're a very busy man, so we do appreciate it.
Well, I was just in the studio today, actually, working on a country song, which is really cool. I can't say anything about it because I got told I can't say who it's for, but it's not Dolly Parton, unfortunately. But yeah, so yeah, I'm in there again tomorrow. So no, it's a pleasure to finish work and come and do this. Talk to you fine gentlemen.
Oh, great stuff, man. Great stuff. Well, that's enough about the modern day. We're here to talk about the 90s, of course.
Yay!
Okay. So the first question we're going to ask you, Rob, is we're going to start at the start of the decade, as that makes sense.
Yeah.
And ask you what your life was like in 1990.
My life in 1990, I just started, or just about to start playing professionally, and I was working for Marks and Spencer's as a warehouse man in Bath, and I was spending a lot of my time in the warehouse and collecting trolleys around the car parks of Bath. But while I was doing that, I had my Sony Walkman on, and I was listening to tunes and playing my band's set in my headphones so I could remember what I was going to be playing that night. So for me, it was a great time because it was exciting. I just moved to Bath. I was starting to gig in malls and places like that in Bath and felt like I was breaking onto the scene. But yeah, during the day, it's a bit like Batman. During the day, I'm an M&S man. And then in the evening, I'm drummer man. And it was just very, very, very exciting times.
Brilliant stuff. So if I have this right, so you turned 20 in 1990, is that correct?
That's true, sir. Yeah.
Cool. So we're talking about your entire 20s then, as we move across the decade, which is really exciting. A man in his prime.
Yeah. Yes, never peak too soon. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we move on then, and we always like to start these interviews by getting a feel for the decade as a whole for our interviewee. So if we then ask you to move up to the middle of the decade and ask where you'd got to in 1995. So presumably you're pro by this point and you're doing stuff all over the place, and you've left Marks and Spencer's behind, presumably.
I have. 1995. We moved to the middle of the decade, and yes, you are quite right, sir. By then I had become professional, and I'd already gigged with Hugh Cornwell. He'd left the Stranglers 1991, somewhere around there. So I'd worked with him in CCW. I've done some sessions which included playing with people like Herbie Flowers and people like that, who I didn't know much about at the time. It was only after the event people were like, you played with the man that did Walk on the Wild Side and all that. Also, Coty Mundy from Kicker on and Coconuts I'd worked with, and also just picking up loads more sessions around the area and becoming a sort of a go-to guy for people in local studios like Riverside, but it was called Kosan then. And sometimes poking my head into real world, but it didn't happen that often. That came a little bit later. So it had gone from warehouse man during the day to drumming man during the day because I started teaching. A friend of mine, Jerry Crozier Cole, got me an audition or interview, both, whatever you want to call it, down at Sherburn School in Dorset, very posh. Mm-hmm. And I went down there and they wanted someone a bit rock and roll, and my CV was looking fairly rock and roll at the time. So they gave me the job and I stayed there for quite a while. And then I had to balance that with touring and so on. And a year after this, of course, I went out to America with Modern English, and I believe you still have the trousers that I wore on that tour. And they were cleaned, I can assure you.
We'll put the YouTube link up to the clip of you playing with Modern English in America. Is it in front of about 20 million US TV viewers, I think? So
it was something like that. Yeah. It was on some morning show that was just. I mean, watching it now, it's like the presenters don't really know what they're doing. It's all a bit like what. But yes, but as I said, that was just a year after. I've been naughty, I've added that, but that was the year just after that. But yeah, so 1995, it was a complete kind of turnaround from where I was before. So playing loads more, a lot of jazz gigs around the area to pick up some pin money, still living in Bath, still going out and drinking and having a great time and being crazy, but definitely more serious playing was happening. And I'd traveled to a few different, continents on tour and done a few things and been on MTV. So things were starting just to move along. And that was when MTV obviously played music rather than reality shows about people that I don't even want to know about. But anyway, I don't know what were the Kardashians or something. I don't know, something like that. I don't watch it, but
yeah, no, that makes three of us, I think.
Good. Keep the faith, boys.
So
that was me in '95.
Okay, yeah, great. That's cool. The trousers. I'm still a bit confused about these trousers. Where are the trousers, and what's the story?
Well, they're probably in that cupboard behind him, actually, on that wardrobe, I would have thought, hanging up. Basically, the idea was the band was called Modern English, and they were big in America, but they were an English band, but they weren't very big here. But in America, they had one hit that was massive. It was called Melt With You, and it was in Nicolas Cage's first film. And it was a few years afterwards put on a McDonald's or a Burger King advert. And I think it's Burger King, because they do a cheese melt or something. So they thought, oh, what's got melt in it? This song. So it made him a fortune. So Robbie and the band, well, what was left of the band, used to go out and just live on Burger Kings probably when they were touring. But, just go out and do that. Anyway, but there's not a punk element, but he was a bit kind of like, even though it was mid-90s and that punk thing wasn't really quite happening in that way, he said, I want a bit of a kind of punk spirit. So I was like, well, I've always wanted tartan trousers from, Sex Pistols or Clash, whoever I've seen wearing tartan trousers, or Captain Sensible. I just thought it was cool. So I went into Burton's in Bath, which isn't there anymore. It's NatWest Bank now, I think. And I went in there and bought a pair of slacks. And I took them out on tour, and they were fantastic. I really liked them. And sometimes on the way home, I leave them some garments, tour garments, like in bizarre places. But they came back with me. And they were in my wardrobe for years. And then I started hanging out with Stu. And I mentioned it to him. He said, man, they were wicked, man. I said, I've still got them, I think. So one night I went to probably the Two Pigs. And I took him along and said, there you go. There's my trousers, mate. And he's like, oh, my God. I don't know if he actually really wanted them. But he ended up with them anyway. So he's got Rob's trousers. The wrong trousers, but maybe the right ones. But they're clean. I did get them dry cleaned. It's all good.
A genuine piece of rock memorabilia, and you think I wouldn't want it, man? No, I very much appreciate it. I believe they're in the cupboard in my bedroom at my parents' house, where I keep all the really important stuff.
Oh man, I'm so glad you got them, because one day they're not gonna be worth anything. But it'd be a nice keepsake of old Rob Bryan, his old slacks, because they went all the way around the country. We toured for months. We were driving most of it in buses, and it was like, oh, how big America is. People moan about driving to Scotland here or Newcastle, but wait till you got to drive coast to coast in America, then you really know what traveling is. So yeah, they were sat on the drum stool with me over a 30-40 date tour of the States. So but I thought they should go to a good home, a bit like my Rolling Stones record, which is an original. You've also got that.
Hopefully that is downstairs. Yeah, that's here, and I spin it regularly. Again, I really appreciate it.
That's all right. Well, I mean, I got my fun out of it, and I wanted someone who would really, really appreciate it to have it. So you've got my slacks and my Stones record. So that's the story, Alex. That's the story. Nothing more seedy than that.
Nice. I mean, yeah, I love the idea of Stu being passed a pair of trousers and down the pub.
It must have looked so weird.
Clandestine swapping of merchandise, yeah.
That's the sort of thing that goes on up and down the country in provincial pubs every night of the week, I'm sure.
Yeah. Some people buy dodgy meat out of carrier bags in pubs. I got a pair of tartan trousers. There you go.
I opened up my dirty rain Mac, and inside was a pair of tartan trousers. Like, do you want these? 32 waist. I can't get in them anymore. So it's 34 waist all the way now, boys.
We've done the beginning and the middle of the decade. What about the end of the decade? What was your life like in 1999?
I was in therapy, and no, I wasn't. I was still rocking, in the free world. I was doing a little bit more teaching at that point. Can't think what happened, but the touring kind of petered out a little bit, and I kind of concentrated more on teaching. And I started working for Millfield School, so I had 2 private schools. So, I was getting a nice sort of wedge, bit of wonga coming in, and some private lessons. And I just kind of concentrated more on local projects. And there was no real, I can't remember why I did that. I think it must be just for money. And I got a really nice flat in Bath up at Camden Crescent. And I think I was just enjoying that kind of life. And the rock and roll thing. I mean, I was still doing sessions at Real World. I worked with Peter Gabriel along the way, somewhere along that timeline as well, which was amazing, obviously. And I did a few other things at Real World. So things were happening, but it wasn't as rock and roll as the start of but then it would go nuts into the 2000s, which I know we're not talking about. But then it picked up again there and kind of ended up where I am kind of now. So I was working like a cover band at that point. I was working in various original jazz funk lineups. Of course, nobody came to see that, because who does? also a Beatles kind of tribute band or cover band. I'm not sure what that was, but we used to wear roll necks, not the wigs, and that was fun. But it was all money gigs, you know. And I think I was and I had a girlfriend that's more settled, and I just didn't have my tartan trousers. But you know, I just felt it's the time just to do that. As I say, 2000 though, that kind of it went skits and went the other way again, and I stopped teaching altogether for a long period of time. But yeah, it was kind of peak a little bit, then it kind of plateaued, if you like. But it was still crazy times. I was still having a great time, and I'd started doing some drum clinics at that point as well, which meant that, you know, some of those things I was doing meant I didn't have to go away and tour. I think a few things were offered to me, and I didn't take them because there were things I didn't really want to do, and I won't say what they were. I've just remembered actually, and I was a bit like, well, kind of done that. I'm not too interested in doing that. So I was taking myself down a different path, but thankfully, it changed again in the 2000s. But yeah, that's where I ended up. So not quite as rock and roll at the start. I was more rock and roll at the start of the decade.
I think the start of the 90s was just generally a bit more of a rock and roll time, wasn't it? Just
it really was. And you know, we'd fallen out of the 80s, which had its good points and its bad points, like any decade. I mean, they're all an amalgam of good, bad, and ugly. You know, people say the best music was there. It's like not true. There's brilliant music all the way through every decade. You just got to find it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there was that going on, and then the grunge thing happened soon into the early 90s, and that was exciting. It changed things up a bit. You know, kind of whisked a lot of the 80s around a bit and spat them out. But again, that sort of petered out quite quickly. But it's all good, you know, just kept things moving. So I know we're going to talk about the music in a minute, but that was an exciting time. And also acid jazz had come back, and funk was sort of getting a rebirth. But we'll do the music in a minute. But yeah, it was a pretty rock and roll time, especially if you're in M&S. Like, you're aware I'm wearing that green suit going around pushing shopping trolleys. You know how to live, I'm telling you. Eminem's got nothing on me.
Okay, so we've spoken about your sort of personal journey through the decades. So now we'll go on to a few of your favourite things from the decade, if we can. There's a few things, there's a few subjects and points that we like to cover with our guests. So first of all, this is a big topic on the podcast. What was the favorite car that you owned, or parent or family member or anything like that? What was your vehicle of the 90s? I suppose you would have passed your test around sort of 88, 89, would you?
Yeah, I did. I passed about 88, 89, yeah, around there somewhere. And there's actually two, I suppose. I'd like to squeeze in if I can. The first one would be my Ford Fiesta Festival, which was a 950. So it's like a lawnmower engine. But it was my first car, and it was orange, and I called it Jerome. Because
brilliant.
Jerome, in the band The Time, which is kind of one of the Prince protege bands, there was Morris Day, who was like the main star, who was like really cool and really slick. And then he had his right-hand man called Jerome, who always brought a mirror out when they were performing, and he'd be doing his hair and his eyebrows and stuff. And he was Jerome. He was like, Jerome, go and get me the mirror and all this stuff. So Jerome became the name of my car. And I had it for a long time. And on that tour with Modern English in 96, my brother-in-law wrote it off. Thankfully, he was fine, but the car ended up like a sort of concertina type thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so she died. But the other great, I mean, I'm a Ford man because it's like a monetary thing. But my second favourite was the Ford Mondeo. When I could actually start to buy newish cars-ish, the Ford Mondeo was the one. And I had two through that 90s period, and they were absolutely fantastic. Some people say two, it can't be that fantastic, you had two. But you know, I moved them on, so I didn't do that kind of too many miles, and people go, no, I don't know about that, mate, tire kickers and all that. I wanted to just do a few thousand or whatever, then move her on. But they were both brilliant. I love them. I love the shape of the first one because it was like the Batmobile, the 60s Batmobile. It had that sort of, which they don't do now, everything's square, but it had this lovely sort of rounded body shape that was really kind of sexy, and then Vauxhall copied it, and a few other companies copied it, of course, and then the Mondeo said, right, now we've got to make them blocky again and square and rectangle, and I bought one of those, and that was great too. But there's something about my burgundy one that was just, that shape was just so sexy, and it was like something from the Jetsons and Batman. It was just great. I mean, do you know the model I'm talking about? It was not bubble sort of shape, but it was just smooth and sleek and not square, basically.
Yeah, my dad had one on an L plate. In the late 90s, early 2000s.
So did I. Absolutely, mine was an L something or other.
There we go.
815 something or other. And the other, it passed me a little while ago, going faster than I was. So nice.
It's still about. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's still about. Yeah, it's crazy. It was passing me on the motorway. I was like, hang on a minute. It looked a bit dirty and a bit smoky, but yeah. So those two cars have been very dear to me. You know, I'd love to say I had a Corniche or something, but not yet.
Well, and R.I.P. Jerome as well. I'm gutted about that. So, you know, yeah.
And I go faster stripes. So all the Fiesta festivals, you couldn't get them off either. They had these different stripes down, and they're two different colours. Like one was an orange, and one was a dark brown, and they went down the middle like a frieze of the car. It was just, I mean, you couldn't get them off. It's a bit naff, but it was just great.
It sounds like it looked like the General Lee, orange and brown, and
it kind of was like that. It kind of was like that. It was like exactly that orange. It was that orange, and I loved it. Honestly, I used to chuck all my drums in the back of it, and I thought I was boss driving that thing around. You know, it was great. And then one day, alas, yes, thanks to Trevor. Damn you, Trevor.
I think this next question is going to be a big one for you, Rob. I mean, of course it is. It's what's your favourite, or what is the record that means the most to you from the 90s?
Do you know what? I was stroking my chin till it nearly caught fire the other day. Nearly started a fire here because, you know, there's too many to name. You know, because I could have said Prefab Sprout, Massive Attack, Air, Bjork, Moby, R.E.M., Portishead, Blur, Prince. There's so many I could have said in that 10-year space and more. You know, Nirvana, like Nevermind, like God, you know. But actually, a band that has come back into the zeitgeist recently through producers I've been working with was Jellyfish. And if anyone knows my Facebook, they'll know I've been sort of pounding on about this band Jellyfish. So I'm going to be a little bit of a maverick and go away from some of these obvious ones like I could have picked, like Blue Lines, Massive Attack and Dummy and all that, which are just superb albums. So they all stand. But I'm going to go for Spilt Milk and Belly Button, to the only two albums Jellyfish made. And they were just fantastic. If you don't know them, go and check them out. They've got they're American, but they took all the best from all the British bands. So it's a bit Queen, it's a bit Beatles, it's a bit Beach Boys. I know they're American. 10cc, bit early ELO, not the later stuff, but the really early ELO, the heavier ELO. Move, you know, Stones. They've got all the great stuff. So the harmonies, the heavy guitars, the grooves, the shuffle, the feel, and they're just brilliant. And I remember I went to Moles one night in Bath, and I used to go every Saturday if I wasn't gigging. And me and my mate used to go, Alistair, and we turned up and it was like, who's playing tonight? And they said Jellyfish. It was like, what? Anyway, these guys come out, and this was 91, 92. So remember Soundgarden and Nirvana, all that stuff's kicking off. These guys come out with psychedelic outfits on, like they've just stepped out of 1967. So the striped flare trousers, the double-breasted sort of velvet jackets that I love to wear now, cravats and all that stuff, long hair, but with this heavy sound, but with these amazing melodies. And with a drummer that played standing up with an amazing voice. He was the lead singer. And it wasn't like drums at the back, guitar, bass. They stood in a line, all four of them. And me and my mate, I just remember drinking Gold Grolsch at the time. It'd be like popping the top off. And I was like, I haven't taken a sip of this for 45 minutes. It just blew me away. And I chatted to them after the show, and they were saying they were going to do later with Jules, and they were getting it together. And unfortunately, a few years later, they disbanded. But the two albums they made, producers and people still talk about it, and they say if they could have lasted another 2 years for when Blur and that sort of Britpop thing happened, they would have been right at the front of that. So yeah, I'm going to say Jellyfish. And for the viewers and the listeners who don't know, go and check them out. A fantastic band, really, really great. But as I say, there could have been any of those others there too. So many great records in that period.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cruel question really to make you pick one from a whole decade and the 90s at that, but
it is. Yeah. It's really hard, man. I mean, and I didn't want to just say Nevermind or Dummy or something, because I guess loads of people have said those. So as I said, I've listed them, so you know they're on my mind. But I had to go for one that maybe just a little bit different.
Yeah, that's great, because I mean, a lot of people won't have heard of Jellyfish, and now they might go out and listen to them. I mean, I've never heard of them, and I now want to go and check them out. So. Yeah.
I mean, there's Crowded House in there as well. There's so many bands. But yeah, you should check them out, because they're one of those bands that, artists today will throw it in an interview and people go, who the hell's that? But they never always go and find out. They just go, what? Jellyfish. But as I say, producers still talk about the way those albums were mixed in that period of time, and the harmonies and just the way they were structured. It's just great music, really good music. And live they were rocking as well. It wasn't all tidy. It was kind of heavy. It was good stuff. So yeah, please go and check them.
Awesome.
Don't be like those other people. Do what Rob says. Go and check it out.
Yes, don't be like those others.
Okay, so sticking with in the entertainment sphere,
Yes.
we're going to move on to movies now.
Yes.
Now we know you're a big sci-fi fan, of course.
I am indeed.
But are we going sci-fi here, or is there another movie that's your pick of the 90s?
Man, I'm going to cheat again. I can't pick one. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, I've got a little list here of things, and they're just a few. I mean, I thought I can't keep reading out loads because they're going to say that's not the point. But oh God, yeah. I mean, straight off the bat, I've got Wayne's World here because that was just amazing. Edward Scissorhands, another one that just incredible. Fargo, Reservoir Dogs, Jurassic Park. That's my little list. I could have gone on. If you want me to pick one today in the cold light of this whatever day we're on, Crash was in there as well. Everyone's going to say Reservoir Dogs, aren't they? I'm going to say Edward Scissorhands then, because I love the soundtrack. And it was the start of, the Batman movie with Tim Burton was the start of his movement, really, properly. And that was amazing. But that was in 89, so I didn't creep in. Otherwise, it would have been that. But also Batman Returns is 1992, so that would have been in there too. But I think Tim Burton just is amazing, and he makes cracking films. And there's something about the soundtrack, the story, the way it was shot that Edward Scissorhands just blew me away. And he's not afraid to connect, even the toughest of men to their emotions. I mean, I'm not like that, but some guys are like, I'm not crying. It's fine. It's fine. It's like, yeah, it's getting to you, isn't it? It's quite sad, this bit. And it kind of gets inside of you a little bit. And it kind of makes you feel those emotions. And I think that's what good movie making and good music is about. It makes you feel that whirlwind of emotions and it almost demands of you to feel something. I think that's getting a bit arty now, but I think that's what he does, and that film delivers in spades. I think that very thing. So sometimes it's rock and roll, sometimes it's a bit this, sometimes it's a bit scary, sometimes it's got that love thing going on. It's just got the drama, the wit in there as well. 1 minute you're laughing at him and the next minute you're nearly crying for him. Yeah, awesome. And Vincent Price is in it, so what could not be better than that? Having Dracula or whatever he was in it. It's amazing. And The Fly, was he in The Fly? I think he was as well. The original Fly.
Do you think we need to change the format here, Alex, and let our guests choose like 10 movies and albums and things?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Maybe 3. Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's it's not your fault, Rob. I think it's completely fair, and I think we're definitely going to allow these honourable mentions. You can't not have an honourable mention when you've only got to pick one for
of course.
Decades,
of course.
And I think because I did eventually pick one with all those, I think it's okay if someone keeps rambling about every single film. It's like, come on, we ain't got the time for that. It's not film 92 or where it was, Barry Norman. But yeah, it is really hard, guys, to pick. But maybe 3 is a good idea, like you said. Maybe that's the thing. But they have to pick one at the top. They have to on the day.
Motion carried.
Get the gavel down.
Well, hopefully this next one will be a bit easier, although I'm not sure. What about TV series?
Oh, well, I mean, again, I could go through those. I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to go straight to the X-Files.
Nice.
And we thought you might.
Why wouldn't you? I could have said so many other things, so many comedy cartoons that were coming out. I don't have to say the name. We all know what that's going to be. But, there's so much great TV. Prince of Bel-Air. You could go anywhere with it. There was like light-hearted stuff. There was heavy stuff, drama. But the X-Files just hit, like Stu said earlier, my sci-fi spot. That's my weak spot. And anything that comes in through that and can hold my attention is a winner. And when I saw the adverts on BBC Two, I think it started first, and I was a bit like, oh, this could be dodgy. She looks a bit straight, and he didn't look like Mel Gibson or something, and she didn't look like Pfeiffer or something, Michelle Pfeiffer. The fact that they were two very almost ordinary looking people rather than the body beautiful was another reason to drag me in. because you got your Baywatches and all that, and it's just also just eye candy. It's like but this was like two people you had to get to know. It's like, why didn't they pick two stars that people would know, and two. The second thing is two actors that weren't absolutely beautiful and blonde and ripped, and you were like, great. So who are these people? And you had to get inside it. And then, of course, the stories were just so well written. I mean, like a lot of things, I have to say, it went on, and I know some people drifted, and I drifted sometimes by series 105 or something. But the first 4 or 5 seasons, and maybe a bit later, just amazing TV. And I think ER, Law and Order, all these things that came afterwards borrowed a little bit of the way it was filmed. Every episode was like a little movie in itself. Which, you know, I mean, you guys are a bit young to remember, but at the time, TV wasn't like that. Even American TV, particularly. I'm not saying it was on the cheap, but it didn't look as stunning as an X-File kind of presentation. Hence why it went on to win Emmys and God knows what. And like anything, I always say to people, if you don't like a band or you don't like the music or the comedian, you have to remember what was around it at the time, whatever decade you look at. And there wasn't an awful lot of stiff competition for it. And it stood its head up above the parapet and it just flew. You know, it was like gone. And whether you're in Japan or, you know, Laycock, everyone knew about the X-Files and it became a sensation. So again, if people haven't seen it, it might seem, oh, that's an old thing I can see on Netflix or Amazon. But you've got to remember, at the time, it was new, it was fresh. And actually, I watched them the other day. It still looks good. It's not like you see rubber bits and people's masks and falling off. It's not like, you know, something that's a bit naff. It still looks cutting edge and it's really good. So it'll always be the X-Files for me. So many great memories of setting your VCR to make sure you got home from the pub and watched it, you know. And there was no advert because it was BBC. It was like the best thing ever.
Fantastic. I know it was huge when it sort of gained a bit of traction. I remember there being a big I think Gillian Anderson was on the cover of FHM or something like that, and that was like their biggest selling issue ever, I think, when she went on the cover.
I bought that in Corsham. I used to go down to the newsagents that's not there anymore. I think it's a bakery now or something like that. Kiosks, there you go. And I used to go in there and I used to rifle through, and if there was a picture of him or her or both of them, boom, I'd go out with my Rhythm. That sounds like a bongo mag, but Rhythm magazine is a drumming mag. So I grabbed that and any X-Files one I could find, you know, as well as Melody Maker, Enemy and stuff. But yeah, always. And I had a poster of her on my wall, and in HMV they used to sell little postcards. They might still do, I don't know, of bands and album covers, and they had loads of X-File ones as well. So I used to buy those too and just pin them on my wall. And and you're thinking you're in your 20s at this point, and you still got that kind of fixation. I loved it. You know, it's only when you reach your 30s you realize you stop doing that, and there's probably a good reason for that. But I don't know. It was like they were my pop stars all of a sudden. It was just a cool movement I got behind, and I loved it.
I suppose Rhythm is a bongo mag technically, but there we are.
And a conga mag, I suppose. You can go into tambourine shakers and more cowbell mag. Yeah.
I'm not sure actually. We've been friends for many years, Rob, but I'm not sure I actually know this about you. So this is going to be a learning curve for me. Do you have a favourite video or computer game of the 90s? Were you much of a gamer?
Well, now you ask. I had to dig deep for this one. I remember going with my girlfriend at the time down to W.H. Smith's in Bath, which I think is still there.
Yep.
And I had a little wedge of cash from a session or a gig that was quite well paid. And I went in there with my finest Queen's pounds. I went in and I bought a Sega Mega Drive.
Yes.
Don't be jealous, boys. I've still got it somewhere. And I bought that, and I had a choice of 2 games. And I had to dig deep for this as well. And it was Jurassic Park and Batman Returns. And when I sorted these answers out last week, I went online and I thought, what are the graphics like for the Batman Returns, or YouTube or something? And it was ridiculous. You may have had like hands above cardboard doing this with the figures. It was absolutely terrible. But I remember at the time, I thought it was the best. Well, it would have been at the time. Again, this is what I'm saying. At the time, it was a brilliant unit and it was great games. But I realized that once I'd got through it, I was never going to be a gamer. I realized that, yes, I like the challenge of going back in, and it started where you left off. That was kind of a revolutionary thing, because apparently games before that didn't do that or something. And I remember this being, oh, great, it's got a memory. It remembers how badly I did last time. Brilliant. I'll carry on being crap at this, And I eventually did them all. But I just realised that the gaming fad was, well, not fad. Look what it turned into. But it wasn't for me. And just today at the studio, some guys were talking about Zelda or Gazelle. Is it Zelda?
The Legend of Zelda.
Yes. There you go. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, I don't know this about you guys. And, you know, some of you are younger than me, some of you about the same age, and you're gaming, you know. And I'm just out of touch with it. I forget that people do that. I think I remember people playing Dungeons and Dragons in the late 80s and nobody would hang with them because it was a bit naff and all that business. When actually it wasn't. But so I kind of, with all that stuff, I always sort of tried to stay on the back foot and go, am I a gamer? I'm not sure. And I never bought into it 100%. And I know I probably missed out on hours and hours of really good fun with mates and people around the world, because I know you can share it, people around the world. I mean, I sound like someone's granddad now, but apparently you can. It fascinates me. But yeah, that's your answer. But as far as it goes, I never took it any further. So unfortunately, I never bought a third game. So if anybody wants to buy me the Sega Mega Drive now on eBay and send it to me, give me another game and I'll get back into it.
Well, you didn't go far wrong by choosing a Mega Drive. That's that's the main thing. And if you still got it, that's brilliant as well.
I wish I did. I threw it out ages ago. But what was the other one? There was two. There was the Mega Drive. What was the was it Atari or something? There was another?
So at the time, it would have been the Super Nintendo, wouldn't it? Alex, I think it was
I reckon
alongside the Mega Drive.
That was the two that were in competition with each other, and I went with Sega. I think because I had the Batman game. I think, but yeah, man. Good days.
There was the third way, which my family went, which was the Amiga, of course. The sort of the wild card.
Wow. Okay. What happened to them?
They just disappeared. Unfortunately, they were just subsumed by the competition, as it were. I think the PlayStation came along and sort of blew everything else out of the water, didn't it? And then
the PlayStation's still rolling, isn't it? Isn't that?
Yeah,
still...
exactly. The PlayStation is sort of up there now. It's the king.
Yeah.
So rest in peace, Amiga. Never forgotten in the Greenwood household.
Hours of fun.
How did the decade shape who you are today, do you think?
Loads, because like we were saying at the start, it gave me that 20s period for every human being is a very important time. And for me, it was all about my early experiences being able to play music. There was a venue in Bath called the Farmhouse, which was just around the corner from Camden Crescent where I was living. And I used to keep my drum kit there up in the long bar, which is above the pub. And we used to rehearse in there and do various things. And the landlord, John and Mary, they were just lovely. And my dad was a drummer in the 60s, and he had played in the Bell, because they owned the Bell in Walker Street as well at one point. So he knew my dad, and some of the musicians I was playing there, they were jazz musicians. Some of them were my sort of dad's age, whatever that would have been at that time, 40 something or other. And I could just go there and cut my teeth. People would be there just drinking their cider and their bitter, and we'd be doing some jazz standards. Then we might go into something crazy, but they didn't seem to mind. And I could be playing there 3 times a week sometimes. I'll do a shift at M&S, sometimes from 5 in the morning for the money till 9 at night. Then I'll quickly get in Jerome, drive up to the Farmhouse. Sometimes they'd bring the drum kit down for me in some makeshift manner. It looked like a left-handed sort of Mickey Dolenz type setup, but I'd quickly assemble it just in time for the 1, 2, a 1, 2, and I'd be there playing. And a friend reminded me of that the other day. And I just had all that chance to play that music, which I know a lot of people haven't got anymore, which is kind of a shame. So, that period for me, man, I cut my teeth playing some nonsense, some great stuff. And the artists I'd worked with who had careers that were still kind of moving up, but they'd maybe made their career in the 70s and 80s, they were starting to use me. Like I said, Hugh Cornwell and Modern English, all these people, Peter Gabriel, all these different people. And it just allowed me to become the professional player that I sort of am now. I would never have been able to do it if it wasn't for that decade. If that bit was missing, there'd be a huge bit missing from my evolution as a human being, meeting my girlfriends, making my different my acquaintances in music, and the local blokes down the pub that you're like, oh, you're a drummer, and I only see them every Saturday down in the Bell or wherever I was drinking, or the Star, on the Paragon. you know, understanding how all this works. And you're going 100 miles an hour, but you're like, oh, maybe I should buy that guy a drink. Oh, and he's asking about, oh, that's nice, but I don't really know him. That's kind of cool. People just jump in and out of your life. Oh, is that what it's like? Brilliant. Move on to a gig. It was all this stuff which I take with me, you know, as baggage, but good baggage. And you learn how to start relationships and control relationships, and, you know, also screw some up and things like that. And along the way, as I say, the music's going, and it was just like looking back, it was just like on the ocean, just going, and you're just taking all these things on. And I'm so thankful that I had the 90s the way that I had it. And I'm sure everyone says that. But for me, you know, as I say, all that playing, when would you do that normally without a landlord coming up saying, hey, lads, play something we know? You know, they would just let us play. And we'd play all this jazzy nonsense or pop nonsense. And, man, you know what I'm saying? You know, if you guys are musicians, well, I know you are. So you know what I'm saying. That's so hard where there isn't an agenda, where it's like, right, boys, give us some Slade or some Queen or something. It's like, just play and we'll drink and we'll clap at the end if we like it. If we don't like it, we won't clap. And you'll still get 25 quid in your pocket at the end of the night. You know, it's like, come on, it's like paid rehearsal time. Just superb. You go to Bristol, it'd be different. You know, you'd have to have a different set. But for me, Bath was my stomping ground. And when I was playing in the farmhouse, it was just anything goes, man. And sometimes when I'm gigging now, I'm not name dropping. Last year, before COVID, we did the Royal Albert Hall. I remember sitting there looking out thinking, if it wasn't for all those times in the farmhouse where some drunk guy has gone past me and hit the cymbal thinking it's funny, and, on his way to the toilet, and I'd go, what an idiot. But, you know, all those times of all that stuff, that work and hardship, get your violins out. I wouldn't have been there. You know, I wouldn't have had the chance to make those mistakes and get things right. You know, and I, you know, when I started writing this, I couldn't even type because I had all these emotions coming in of like, that's incredible. You know, it really wouldn't have been, really wouldn't be the person I am today without that decade doing what it did, as well as all the music influences you spoke about in the movies. All of it comes in. It's quite incredible. And your brain is like a kid. It's like a sponge. You're taking all these influences in from all these different places. And it's just phenomenal, you know. And if some of you guys listening are going through it now, enjoy it. You might not know you're enjoying it, but enjoy it and make the most, because it is an incredible time. You hit your 30s, you know, into another decade, and it all kind of changes again. But yeah, that was my time, and I was 20, like you say, right at it was perfect for me, you know. It was like boom, 1990. These numbers are working out. This is going to be great. In 10 years, I'm going to have all this fun.
We will end on the same question that we always end with all our guests. Robbie, what is the one thing from the 1990s that you'd most like to bring back?
Oh, again, that's so difficult. My tartan trousers.
You can have them back if you want them. You can have them.
No, that would be wrong. I can't do that. Well, you know, selfishly, I mean, I don't know if people answer like, you know, world peace. I'd love to say that right now, obviously, and that's what I believe. But anyway, let's hope. Fingers crossed. You know, selfishly, I'll say things like Jerome. I'd love to have Jerome back. I probably wouldn't, because I'd get in him and think, oh, this was crap. But I'd like to have, again, I'm being very selfish with these answers, but I'd like to somehow get in a TARDIS and jump back and just see myself in the Bell and the farmhouse and gigs in Bristol and just think, oh my God, if only I could come up and tell you about, you know, this or not to play that or to do this, you know. Selfishly, I'd love to go back and to capture some of that again, some of those moments, some of my drinking nights with my friends, you know, some of those nights at Moles where you turn up and suddenly the Lars were there playing, or as a secret gig, or Oasis were playing, you know, just some of those things where you turn up and you're like, what were you doing here? You know, all those things, and also family members that come and go, unfortunately. You know, it'd be nice to get, which is a bit of a serious answer, I guess, but it'd be nice to get some of that back. And also to go back to my foreman at M&S and just give him a piece of my mind, because he wasn't always very nice. So I'd like to go back and say, oh, you, look at me now. And actually, I still see some of those M&S guys occasionally if I'm walking around Bath and stuff. And they used to call me dude. They were like, because I was the youngest member of staff on the warehouse. And they used to call me dude. And then when I used to come in, they're like, all right, dude, what music are you listening to, dude? And I remember I brought in the Prince single. I can't say it's because it's got a rude word in it, but Sexy MF, which was Sexy Mother.
Sexy Mark Franklin.
Yes, exactly. Which got near I think it was number 2. It got in the top 5 anyway. So I went to HMV around the corner and I bought the cassette of it and I played it. I kept playing it on repeat in the warehouse. And all the guys go, dude, this is so cool. We were all dancing. And then my foreman come in and he was like, disgusting, you've got to turn it off. Which I suppose it was. But it was kind of radical at the time. It was 1992 and someone saying, you sexy mother. And it's on the radio and it's cool, you know. So, yeah, I'd like to relive some of those again. That was just kind of fun. And of course, you know, every generation has its kind of, that was our moment. And I think, you know, hip hop coming in and bad language in music through Prince and a few other people, and the sexiness of it was daring, it was new, it was fun, you know. And you're not going to go through that now. When I hear language in songs now, I just think, kind of been done. And you sound like an old fart, but it's kind of, whatever. You said F, did you? Oh, great, you know. But it meant something to say F in 1992. That was something, you know. So little moments like that. And obviously, another thing I've just thought of, Vic Reeves' Big Night Out. I've got to throw that in there because I would love to see that come back. I know it did for one season, but I would love to see that come back again because I think that was brilliant. And I used to look like Vic Reeves. I still do a little bit, looking at myself. Maybe not the hair so much now. And I remember going to the Prince of India restaurant, which isn't there anymore. And me and my friend, the same guy I went to Moles with, we were having a curry, obviously. And we were doing all the, you wouldn't let it lie, and all that business, which was all his slogans at the time for the Big Night Out. And this bloke kept staring at me. And I said to Gareth, my mate, I said, he's upset. He's going to tell me in a minute for us to shut up. And then he started coming over. And I was like, oh, he's coming over. And he said, excuse me, can I ask you something? And I said, sorry, we're a bit loud. He said, no, are you Vic Reeves? Because I had the proper, quiff and everything at that point. And I went, oh, God, I thought you were going to have a go at me. He said, you are, aren't you? Me and my wife, you are, aren't you? And I said, I'm not. I'm really sorry. And he was like, oh, I thought you were. You look just like him. I was like, yeah, no, I'm sorry to disappoint you. And she was like, oh, you do look like him. I was like, oh, thank you. Yeah, so anyway, there you go. They're a bit rambled. But, yeah, there's quite a few things in there I'd like to have back. And my younger skin. That'd be nice. And hair.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for joining us tonight. As I said, we really do appreciate it. It's been a great tour through your experience of the 90s. But before we wrap up, can you tell us a bit more about what you're doing at the Beatles Museum next month? Because it's obviously a really, really interesting and important engagement for you, I would imagine.
Yes, it is. Basically, Gary Astridge, who's Ringo's personal drum curator of all his kits, but especially his Beatle period drum kits, which there are 7 or 8 of them. He comes over every now and again for the Ludwig Drum Company, which is Ringo's famous, well, not Ringo's, but he played Ludwig drum. He comes over and he does talks on Ringo's setups and, you know, what sizes. It's a drum geek thing, you know. So we did something at the Vintage Drum Show last year in October where I did some Ringoisms and talked about to a room full of drummers what was special about his playing, like you could Charlie Watts or anybody, you know, the things that you should really hone in on, not just the Ticket to Ride rhythm, but there's other things going on. So they said, the organizer said, look, why don't we get Gary together? So you could play a bit. Gary could talk with a PowerPoint about Ringo, and he knows Ringo. They hang out all the time, tell you some stories, talk about the kits at Shea Stadium, the kits on the Ed Sullivan Show and all that, and the one on the Let It Be film and all that. You could talk about that and do it together. So Gary was up for it. I was up for it. And then the Beatles Museum were up for it. So really, as a Ringo Beatle fan, it's like I couldn't get any better kind of commendation than that to say, come on our home turf. I mean, it's going to be nerve-wracking because I'm in Liverpool playing this stuff in the Beatle Museum. And, you know, I am not Ringo, but peace and love. But I will do my best to show you, you know, what's good about his drumming and what you know, other drummers, Nick, because you've listen to Dave Grohl, he talks about Ringo's drumming. Loads of people talk about it. And it's like, why? Well, let's find out, you know. So it's like but it's not open just to drummers. It's open to anybody, you know. You'd have to be I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. It needs to be open to Beatle fans, but there's going to be a little bit of knowledge. So yes, I'm very proud to be doing that, and hopefully we'll do a few more, you know, maybe travel it around, go to the States with it and stuff. But it's one of those things, you know, everyone's like, oh, well, you know, you're not playing it exactly the same. It's not really about that. It's, you know, I'm not going to lead everything with my left hand, for instance. I'm not a copy, you like. This is more about how his drumming's influenced my playing, and how authentically within reason to play it, you know. And I've had a few people saying it's really close. So that's a good thing. So yes. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm very excited. It's April the 4th, Monday, April the 4th. Get your tickets in Liverpool and come on up. I think that was Liverpool. Was that right? Or was that Birmingham? I don't know.
It sounded okay to me, man. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And I think we could definitely say we'll have you back on, perhaps to talk about sci-fi in the 90s. Who knows? But I'm sure.
I would love to do that. As I say, I sort of steered away from it, but yes, if you want to get back in, we could do a deep dive, as they call it, into that. I'd love to.
I'm sure we can think of an excuse to have you back on in the future. But
thank you.
For now, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cheers, Rob. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it.
Big thanks to Robbie Bryan for coming in to tell us about his 1990s. I mean, how fantastic. He's obviously sat down and really thought about the questions that we've asked and the answers he wants to give. And, you know, brilliant to have that level of research for a guest. I'm not suggesting that anybody else hasn't done that. But, you know, you could see that he was really, really into the, you know, into his 90s. So absolutely brilliant, and hope to have him on again someday.
Yeah, it was great. It made me want to just wanted to go back to Bath in 1993 and just try out some of the pubs back then, go to the farmhouse that Rob mentioned, and just see what the scene was like. It got me nostalgic for a time that
drink rough cider and hit one of his cymbals on your way to the toilet.
Yeah, well, I know not to do that now, but yeah, it was great. It was great to meet Rob, and like you say, great research and great answers.
Yeah, I think a sci-fi in the 90s episode is definitely in the offing with Rob. We'll get him back on sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah. If you want to let us know any of your thoughts about anything that you've heard in this episode or any of the previous episodes, whether that's what's the most 90s, the thing you'd bring back from the 90s, anything we talked about, then you can get in contact in the usual places. So we're on Twitter at allright90s. You can email us on allright90s@gmail.com. We're on facebook.com/allright90s. All of those are letters. There's no numbers in any of those. And then on Instagram, we are allright.90s.podcast. And any of those is a suitable way to get in touch. And we'd really love to hear from you. So please do that.
And please do get in touch with your suggestions for our next episode, which is going to be the first episode in our movies series. And we're talking about the movies of 1990 this time. So if you have a favourite movie from 1990, a favourite movie moment from 1990, anything like that, please do let us know, because we'll be recording that episode next. And we'd love to hear from you on that subject as well as all the other subjects we've already covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, until then, when we are going to be talking about the movies of the 1990s, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.